is Dan Henk. Welcome to another edition of the Skull Sessions. Today, my guest is, how do I say your name? Lindsey Lahm?
Yes, it's
Okay,
Lamh, but it's Lindsay Lamb.
okay, awesome. All right, Zan fucked that up. All right, Lindsey, tell me what you got going on. Tell me what's coming out, where people can buy your shit and give you money.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Dan, and I'm excited to talk with you about my book. I am an author. I have a book that I published in October of last year. It's called A Voracious Grief, and it's gothic horror set in Victorian England about an overprotective aristocrat named Ambrose Bancroft and his increasingly unsteady sister, Maddie. They have kind of returned to London society after the death of their younger brother, but they're forced to retreat back to their countryside estate after Maddie causes a scandal. But what they don't know is that there's a monster lurking in the manor. And so they have to kind of
Yeah, I was
wrestle
about
with
to
the
ask if
family
there's like any like
drama.
fantastic or supernatural element.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So that would be the monster, right?
Yeah, the monster. I think there's also, I'm a Christian author. And so then there's some spiritual elements. Maybe you could categorize it paranormal. You could categorize it a lot of different ways, probably. So, yeah. And then they part of the middle alter world, you start out with your status quo world of how the character's life is, and then everything turns upside down in the middle, right? And that middle section has basically they go into like this illusion type of other world that is feels very like dark fantasy in a way. So
Okay.
takes some
It,
interesting turns.
one thing I wonder about it, I'm not religious, but I don't mind reading religious stuff, as long as I don't feel like it's like preaching to me about the religion. I mean, obviously like anything like the Exorcist like incorporates a little bit of like, you know, their religious elements in it, but it helps to tell the story. You-
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's kind of what you go for with your stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Christians wouldn't like my book. And I felt like in my book I was trying to tell just a really good story. I wasn't necessarily primarily trying to tell a Christian story, but because I'm a Christian, just the way that I view the world, that's gonna end up coming out a little bit. Um,
Right. Well,
but
just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you have to, you know, like bear down on people with it and like overload them with it. I mean,
oh, for sure.
Stephen King is a Christian, so nobody would say like, "Oh, I read that stuff and he wouldn't stop preaching to me." You know,
Mhm.
so it depends. That's why I was asking, just because you know, if somebody says you got to read this book, and I'm like, okay, cool, and they're like, yeah, but it's really preachy, I'm not going to read it. But they're like, yeah,
Right.
it's a great story. I don't care. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you're Catholic. I don't care if you're, I don't care what you are as long as it's a good story. That's all
Yeah.
that really matters in the end.
Yeah, and I think your typical American churchgoer would probably look at the cover of my book only without even knowing anything about it and just be like, there's a skeleton on it. Like, I don't know if I should read this book. But actually like they might think this can't be a Christian book when actually I think talking about death and wrestling with like what things are actually more serious and more compelling to the characters than the threat of life versus death. um like that is a very Christian idea, is that death is not the most powerful or the most ultimate reality, that there's other things that are actually more important. um so I would say in a way it's a very Christian book. It has a lot of themes, but it's not Christian in the veneer of it's not going to be happy go lucky or you know look
Well,
very.
there's like almost any religion has like some sort of afterlife involved, whether it's Krishna, whether it's, Islam, whatever it is, like they have their
Mhm.
version of like life after death. So a lot of people don't believe that, like, even like, by the way, atheists, a lot of people think atheist means like, anti-God. That would be an anti-theist. Atheist means, I'm questioning, and there's a lot of the former religions haven't answered my questions yet. So,
Mm,
so going with that, there are quite a number of atheists who like believe in some sort of hereafter, other realm, whatever, not necessarily something tied to religion, but something beyond this life.
mm, yeah, yeah. Well, that makes me think about how I don't know, I just think it's a very useful thing to talk about what comes after life, even just in a like a fictional story. Just because sometimes we can get so bogged down in the day-to-day life or even just hardships that we're going through that we kind of don't care about that. You kind of forget to like have that inform any of your decisions. Pardon me. But yeah, anyways, that's my book and it's just available pretty much anywhere you can find books, ebook and paperback and everything. And it's mostly available through my website if anybody's interested. So yeah,
Okay, are you gonna have it like out on Amazon and in Barnes
it
and
is
Noble
on
and
it
stuff?
is on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. You can buy it for the best price directly through my website store. And I also have some fun t-shirts and merchandise you can get that's book inspired. So art that I did myself.
Okay,
Um,
in what they could get like a signed copy if they
uh-huh.
like.
Yeah.
So, but it's also like, do you have a publisher that puts it out? That put it on a bunch of different platforms? You put it out yourself? Like, I know that like I use both. I use publishers and I put stuff out myself. And I,
Oh, I
I
didn't
actually
realize.
start
You're right.
yeah, and I actually started a publishing company. Which kind of helps me. You don't necessarily need a publishing company to put
Mm,
stuff out. You can use like draft it digital and like get it across all platforms. So
yes.
I was just
I
wondering how you went about it.
yes, I am self-published. I use Drafted Digital and I have really loved that company. So they've been fun to work with. I'm working on getting a hardcover version put out through Ingram Spark.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, a lot of people have been recommending Ingram Spark lately. Have you thought about doing an audiobook?
I applied for a grant through my state's arts commission, and that was awarded to other artists this year. So I'll probably apply for that again. But an audiobook is a monetary investment that I'm not ready to make yet. Starving artist over here.
Well, there are also plenty of people that they'll do like a royalty share. So it's like you don't pay them
Yeah.
up front; they take a percentage of the sales of the audiobook.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to find somebody like that.
Like I know the Amazon division that does it is ACX, but like I know Friday Night Books, the Joe at Friday Night Books, he approached me at a convention. They do it as well, so you might want to check out Friday Night Books. Um, because again, it's a royalty share.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I really want to put it into audiobook. I have several friends and family members who are pretty much just audiobook listeners, like they don't read actually. And so I know that there's a whole market of people who would, really enjoy this story, but aren't going to pick up a paperback. So,
It was unfortunate how few people read these days. So like
yeah.
I'm always surprised when I'm like, "Hey man, check out my book," and they're like, "Oh, I would, but I don't read." I'm like,
Mhm.
how did you make it this far if you don't read?
Yeah, like I agree and I am very much a lover of all books, especially really old ones which you're not going to find in audiobook form. However, I am also a very busy woman and I have 6 children and sometimes An
Holy
audiobook is
shit,
just going
six
to be,
children.
you know, for me, an audiobook could be the difference between reading something or not reading it, And I know some people don't count that as reading. And I have a son who has dyslexia. And so I know that for a lot of people who have a different special needs type of situation, an audiobook makes literature available to them that would be really difficult otherwise to just consume. So,
Well, I think
they're
one
great.
really nice thing about audiobooks is like I do a lot of stuff like illustration and stuff. So if there's something on the background I can listen to, whether it's a podcast or
Hmm.
whatever. If
Yeah.
I drive somewhere like a long drive anywhere, I listen to an audiobook. Like I did Scares and Cares, it's like a horror convention. It was
Yeah.
in March, and when I did that, I drove from where I live in New York to there, which is about 7 hours. So the whole time I was just listening to audiobooks. I think it's
Yeah.
really good for that. It's a really good format for that.
Hmm.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
I just some people are not made to narrate their own books. Like so like I'm not. Some people narrate and they're like, well, I don't really unless the author does it, I don't really take it seriously, but I think whoever does a good job. And a lot of those audio people, like they're voice actors, so they're trained in
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
let's get back to your book for a minute. So what would make your book different? Like what would make it pop out that would make people go, yeah, I should check that out.
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting. My editor pointed out to me when we were working on making a marketing plan for the book launch last year. Um, she was just pointing out to me that I have all of the basically the tropes of gothic fiction and especially gothic horror, like the maiden in peril trope, and just different, like the monster in the mansion is definitely probably the main one. Just all the gothic architecture and ambiance, like dark ambiance type of thing. But at the same time, I've kind of created a book that bends the genre a little bit. um, you think of most horror stories as kind of like taking a group of friends and then picking them apart over the plot, either like through manipulating their flaws or setting up relationship dynamics that are going to be in conflict. And they ended up having to fight to survive, like the monster or the serial killer or whatever the bad guy is. And they're often like pitted against one another in the process to try to survive. But in my book, it's actually the friendships of different people, of the sub characters, that kind of act as lifelines for the brother and sister who are the main character, while they're facing their internal and external demons. And so I think that that's kind of like a little bit of a different twist that readers might enjoy. I enjoy it a lot. Like I enjoy other fiction. I mean, other horror as well. So I'm not like opposed to that or anything, but I just think it just puts a fresh kind of twist on the genre.
What other horror is your favorite? Like what really grabs you?
Mm. Well, recently I really enjoyed that movie, The Menu. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, it was really good. I like horror that makes you ask deep questions, that kind of I don't know, just plays with your expectations. I think M. Night Shyam, how do you say his name?
Shyamalan, yeah.
Shyamalan, his movies are really good at doing that. Like it basically sets you up to have a certain expectation and then completely turns the plot around on you. And I really love that.
Well, I thought
There,
his first couple were great. Like The Sixth Sense obviously is a classic. It's really
Mhm.
good. Um,
Yeah,
but what was the other one? Unbreakable. So
Split and yeah,
Unbreakable was great. And then I remember after that, like then I saw Signs, and then I kind of gave up on it.
yeah.
But I heard The Last Airbender wasn't that great. I heard a lot of that stuff wasn't that great. Like, did he come back up? Did you like a lot of that stuff? Like, you have a
You
different
know,
opinion on the other people?
I do like his older things much better. I think The Village is probably my favorite. Have you seen that one?
No, but I basically heard what the premise was and heard not to see it. So
Oh,
I don't
really?
know. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna argue with that. it's it's really good. I love it when a twist completely takes you by surprise, and it's a little bit hard for stories to completely surprise me because I'm always thinking in the story realm of like how do plots work and how do characters work. And so usually I expect something to happen along the lines of what happens, especially if the plot gives you good foreshadowing, you're going to expect for that thing to happen, you know.
Does it
And
happen
so
in your book? Is there like a little bit of a twist?
there are several.
Okay.
Yeah, there are several really good twists. I think that they're good. People who have read my book have told me that the twists take them by surprise a lot too. So hopefully that's something I'm good at because I also really enjoy that in movies and books that I read.
Well, definitely you should really enjoy your own stuff.
I hope so. I
But
definitely spent a lot of time with it.
if you like, I know people hate to do this, but if you had to compare it to something, if you said, "Hey, you like this? You should check out my shit,"
Hmm.
what would you say?
That's a really good question. Um, so, hmm, I don't, I don't know. So I guess it has elements, certain pieces that are similar to other things, but as a whole, I don't think that I've come across a story that has a lot in common. Um, I've heard that,
Like maybe parts of your tale are similar to parts of another story.
yeah. So like how the book Rebecca by I don't know if you've read that one, but it's like this. They made it an adaptation of it on Netflix this
See,
last
I haven't
year.
seen that either. So
Oh, okay. But it's basically this story where this woman marries a man and his previous wife, whose name is Rebecca, um, just kind of overshadows the mansion that they live in and the staff and her how she views her marriage and like all these kinds of things. And like this character, Rebecca, is never on the page, but her presence is just so
it's
felt in
felt,
like
yeah.
this oppressive way that she like haunts the whole book, and so it's this really cool feel to the story. I really liked it. I think that book is really different than a lot of books. I think my book is similar to that in that they're Ambrose and Maddie, this brother and sister main characters, have lost a lot of their family members, so now they're gone, but they do kind of have so much trauma and things that like just things in their everyday life that bring to mind past scenes or past experiences with their family members that causes them to kind of go back in time and relive that grief and stuff. And so I think in a similar way to Rebecca, there's a lot of ghosts, of memory
There's like
type of thing.
stuff going on beneath the surface that you don't really see, and then something that turns out to be like supernatural.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Do you like some people like to be real punchy, like they're like they start out like right away, like right in your face. Some people like to build up a little bit of backstory first, and then like
Hmm.
as it goes along, it steadily gets more intense and more intense. How do you approach it?
Yeah, I definitely nailed the middle section really well in the initial drafts and then had to rework the beginning and rework the ending a whole lot. That was a very long process for me. So, I think that now it there's a very good introduction to the characters and their world and their past and things like that, but it does read a little bit more slow. It's not going to dive right into the action. It's very much a tale that has a lot of foreboding leading up to the big climactic twists and stuff that happen more
So
in the
it
middle.
has like kind of like build up, but like kind of like a medium temper build up, and then like boom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and then there's just different unexpected things that happen in the middle that I think I did try to foreshadow a good bit in the beginning as much as I could, because since it's horror, it doesn't really start out super scary until they go away from London to their countryside manor where like the monster is in the manor. And so I didn't want readers to be just like shocked by that of like, oh, this was a nice story set in Victorian England in London,
Right.
high society. And then all of a sudden, whoa, what's going on?
Oh,
Um,
that's not necessarily bad. I had
so
somebody read one of my books and they took a star away because they said it was too terrifying. I was like, that's
oh,
actually like an indirect compliment.
like you must not have read the genre label. What I'm interested in what kinds of books you have written.
More cosmic horror. Like I could probably go on forever. It's so many books and seen so many movies. Well, we'll spend all day here. We won't get to like your work, but yeah, like I would say like if you've seen the movie Event Horizon,
I don't think so.
okay, that's a great cosmic horror movie. Have you seen The Mist?
No, I've seen clips from that. I haven't seen the movie.
Well, one of my favorite writers ever is H.P. Lovecraft, and that's kind of
Mhm.
The Mist is written by Stephen King, but he even said that was his ode to H.P. Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that whole like cosmic horror, other dimensions, other worlds, like that
Yeah.
really grabs me. That's what I like.
Yeah. I've read some short I really, really enjoy short stories, especially gothic or horror short stories. And I've read some really interesting HP Lovecraft. Yeah. He feels very different than a lot of other authors, which is I think why he gets to claim the genre.
Well, he started at a time when horror was kind of like looked down on. It's like, it's not
Mhm.
serious fiction. So he was his whole life he was poor, and he died. He had cancer, and he was too poor to even go to the doctor. And when he finally went to the doctor, it was way too late.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, those days if you had cancer, probably nothing would really help. But yeah, he died poor, and if he was alive today, he'd be a multi-millionaire because everybody uses his stuff. Like
Yeah.
you like if you're a fan of his, you'd be surprised at how many people use his stuff. Like, everybody
Hmm.
that's big, like Stephen King, Dean Arcus, lots of people who are small, but like that whole cosmic horror element, I think was like pretty much like I wouldn't say started by him, but it was definitely expounded on, developed, and like approachable to the mainstream by him.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite horror authors or favorite horror directors?
Hmm. Let me think. I wrote down some of my favorite stories. There's this more recently published book that's like inspired by, it's not really historical fiction, but it's kind of like Celtic feeling. And I don't know that it's listed on Amazon as horror, but I think that it would fit in the genre, and I really enjoyed it. It's called The Door on Half Bald Hill, and it's basically kind of like about the world is ending and everybody is saying give up hope and just despair.
Was
um
very
it's
apocalyptic and
it's very,
dystopian.
yeah, but it's like almost like the opposite of what you think of apocalyptic as being like in this city and everybody's panicking and like looting stores and stuff. It's just out in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, this very small village of like maybe 18 people who all have known each other their entire lives. And so it's almost like just sitting in your house watching the last candle burn down, and you're about to be plunged into utter darkness with your family, and there's just like nothing you can do about it. That's like the feel of the novel. And then there's just the main character is just this kind of like this bard poet who's it's his job to get the prophecy, the word from God, except for there's not really religion in this world. But that's like his job, and there's no word, there's just silence. And so it's just like that foreboding plot throughout the entire novel. And I really like the ending. there's a bit of a twist at the end, and it's a very satisfying ending. And the world doesn't end, and everybody's, fine. But it's like that's kind of like the kind of horror that I enjoy, is something that kind of makes you squirm a little bit and also makes you ask questions about like who are people when you strip everything away but life and death, and like what is the thing that keeps people together or drives them apart, basically. So that was a really interesting read.
What would you say personally that is?
Oh, what divides people and or unifies them?
Like what keeps people together, makes them, I guess, like accomplish their goals, be like,
Mm-hmm.
there's more to this than just what's going on around me.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of having faith in something, whether that is faith in another person that like they are worth fighting for, or maybe faith in God or faith in some ultimate good or ultimate, entity outside of ourselves. Combine that faith with actual empathy, like human empathy. Um, I think that those are the things that drive societies towards life and goodness. And that when one of those things is lacking or one of those things is overpowered, like they're not in balance, that's where you get some corrupt societies. Like basically, if you just have the faith, but you don't have the empathy, that's a cult, right? That's gonna drive you to fanaticism. Um, and just create something that just kind of like takes people in and chews them up and uses them.
That reminds me of dad joke. You want to do dad joke real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Who's the greatest boxer of all time?
Oh, I don't know.
Jim Jones. He knocked out 900 people with the one punch.
I don't know who that is.
Jim Jones was he was like one of those cultists. That's what reminded me of it.
Oh,
And
was
he
that
brought
the
all the people.
Kool-Aid?
Exactly.
Kool-Aid
Yeah.
guy? Ah, that's a horrible joke. But
Well,
yeah,
I
speaking of
think it's
cults.
appropriate for a horror podcast.
Yes, no, yes. But yeah, that's a very cult related. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously not empathy. It's like me and mine, and that's it. You know.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think
Or
that's
even
also,
just me at the
yeah.
top of the pyramid.
Well, you know what it is too. Is like he moved his congregation down to, I think it was Argentina, and like there were people that like the neighbors or the cousins or relatives or whatever that said, you should check into this. So a congressman would, or a mayor or whatever from the area, went down to check on him, and he actually was like, okay. So he's going back to his plane. He's like thinking, it's all right. But Jim Jones kind of, he got paranoid in his head. He's like, kill him. So then he killed him. Then he's like, oh, they're gonna come for me. Then he like had everybody kill themselves.
Mm. Oh, that's awful. Yeah.
Very, very narcissistic, very like
Huh?
crazy.
Yeah.
But anyways, so let's go away from Jim Jones for a minute. So how can people see you? You have a website, you
Mhm.
have an Amazon authors page, you have a Goodreads page. Like how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, I have a Goodreads author page. I have a website. My website is just www.lindseylahm. So Lindsey. Lamb is LAMH.com. So yeah, you can find me on there. I keep up a blog on my website. And so I'm really interested in psychology, as you might tell, of like, why do people do what they do? Why do people think the way they do? And um I do blog a bit more about religious topics of like, critiques with certain Christian culture, and also ways that I, as an author, try to approach the art from my faith standpoint. And so there's just different topics on there people might find interesting. Especially if you're wondering how can a Christian write horror, like most people would say you can't. And so I've got some blogs on there about that and about why I did a whole series on like, here's things that Christians don't like to talk about, like sex and alcohol and death and violence and things like that, feeling suicidal. And so those are things I've blogged about
Right.
on
Well,
my
I,
website.
I guess it also kind of depends on like how you look at life, like what your perspective is. Like I read like she's a Muslim horror author. I was like, you know, what are you able to get across? What are you able to discuss? And she is a little bit limited, but by not only by your faith, but by like the government where she lives and stuff. But yeah, it depends
Mm.
on like how you look at stuff, how you think about stuff. But all right, well, thank you very much for doing this podcast. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there for people to check out?
Yeah, just that I really like to engage with readers and subscribers. So if you do subscribe to my newsletter, I send out free scenes of stuff that I'm writing, and just updates of like character art and things like that. So if you're interested in the whole writing process or how a book gets made, I send out emails about that. You can sign up for that on my website.
Okay, awesome. And you have like a contact form there, and it'd just be like contact
Yeah, and I
Lindsey.
have a sign up. I have a page that's just about my newsletter, and it has a sign up box. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Anything else you want to throw out to the general airspace?
Well, just thanks so much for having me on, Dan. I've enjoyed our conversation.
All right, well, thank you.